just not away uneasy. Oh, you poor old son, you see, it's only, could be anyone.
And said, so we've blown up the northern winding house. And he said, well done, old boy. So I said, I'm now ready to go back to England, sir.
At 2:30 in the morning, the surviving commandos came here, where they'd arranged to meet the small boats that would take them home. They were pleased as punch with the way things had gone. But the elation was short-lived, because the scene that greeted them out in the estuary was truly horrific. Almost all of the wooden MLs with their exposed fuel tanks had been blown to smithereens. According to witnesses, the whole estuary was on fire.
Chaps were drowning, there were pools of burning fuel on the water. You had to kick with your feet like mad to try and steer the raft away from the flames. And it was an absolute inferno.
There was a sort of sea of black. You could see sort of sinking boats and hear shouts coming from the river and so on. And then very quickly, the colonel said,
it was obvious that there was no transport home. So he said,
right, we'll fight our way out of the town
and we'll split up into small groups and make our way severally across the Spanish border.
I thought, that's a bit of a tall order.
Spain was a daunting 350 miles away. But even before they could set off, they'd have to fight their way out of Saint-Nazaire itself. So that's 5,000 Germans who by this stage were awake, alert and organised, against fewer than 120 Brits, half of whom were wounded.
If you're street fighting, you must secure any crossing.
Tiger Watson came round this corner, found himself face to face with a German sniper.
Ran forward, saw him lean forward, pressed the trigger of my Thompson submachine gun, and typically Watson, the magazine was empty. Click, click. Unfortunately, his magazine wasn't empty, and his shot broke my arm and bowled me over.
A party of Germans ran up to him, and one of them actually used the cliched expression, for you, the war is over.
And I thought, well, I shall have to, escape eventually, but don't feel quite up to it at the moment.
I was almost certain I'd be killed because there was a watch point, a tower, and I had to go past it. The Germans must have seen me, and I knew they'd fire, and they did, but they hit me in the back and the arm and the leg.
Chance, the stockbroker who'd blown up the pumping house, made it to this point when a machine gun bullet fired from the top of the U-boat pens over there took his knee joint out. He was no longer able to walk, so he was captured as well. The commandos realised that they were trapped on an island, and that the only way off it and into the town was across this bridge, which was guarded by what must have seemed like half the German army. By the time they got here, there were only 80 of them left, but plainly, they still had some fighting spirit left, because they just formed themselves into a sort of great big mass and charged.
Captain Roy now led the assault across the bridge. Streams of bullets hitting those girders, ricocheting off the roadway. Machine guns, pom-poms, rifles. It was like a damn good November the 5th, only more so.
Bit by bit, the commando numbers were whittled down until the remaining men, low on ammo, went to ground in the town. Corin Purdon ended up in a cellar.
We suddenly heard all this shouting outside, and then the door burst open, and there were Germans standing there with their coal scuttle helmets and their weapons, looking terribly tense. Frankly, if I'd been there, I'd have chucked a couple of hand grenades down and finished us off, but they didn't. And the colonel, who had his pipe in his mouth, just sort of walked up the steps and said, well, we've done what we came to do, you know, that's that.
As dawn broke, the battle was pretty much over. Just 5 of the landing party would eventually make it to Spain and freedom, and 222 would escape the horror on the few remaining wooden boats. Of the 600 or so men who'd come to France the previous evening, 214 had been taken prisoner.